Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the April BIM practice group meeting with the Construction Specifications Institute. Today we're going to be talking to SMARTBIM about what they're doing with building information modeling and content, and what their thoughts are, what their how they're managing information, how they're managing content, and kind of their overall perspective. Today we're joined with Andrew Arnold from SMARTBIM, who's going to kind of go through their processes. But before we start, we just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Andrew. I'll let him introduce himself. He's the VP of Product Management for SMARTBIM. But then also talk a little bit about some next meeting topics. I'll probably be taking next month to talk about what I'm doing with BIM, since in February we had Autodesk and now we have SMARTBIM. I'm going to close it up with sort of what I'm doing with BIM and then start thinking about some additional topics. Thinking about some different tools that are available. A big one that's starting to come to the forefront is implementing OmniClass. So we're going to think about putting together a good session or group of sessions to talk about OmniClass. And then some product model resource review that I think, Roger, you had been playing around with that a little bit.
Well, I think, that may be a little bit of what we're talking about here, just how do you deal with product models, both from creating them and managing them. So
sure.
Andrew's going to give us some insight on that. So that might be a little bit redundant with the content libraries.
Right. I wasn't sure whether that review was designed to be more of a recap of what we've done in the last few months. So
yeah, I think that's maybe that's what we would do after your session next month. Then maybe we'd try to pull something together, a little bit more of an open discussion, and even it might even be nice if we could invite any members of the practice group that wanted to talk a little bit about how they're dealing with products and product modeling in their offices and in their practices, and even in the area of, even maybe trying to explore specifications and models a little bit. If anybody's working in a practice where you've got modeling going on by the design team and you're the specifier, if we could talk about that a little. So maybe we try to have sort of an open discussion session more in the, I guess that would be the June meeting. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's a great idea, and it also touches on something else that I had sort of been following a little bit in some of the LinkedIn groups. There was a topic that came up. It was a pretty good thread that was passed around about the types of content that are out there and the levels of detail that are expected. So it would be an interesting sort of open forum to discuss, what is the expectation for a product manufacturer's BIM? How much detail are you looking for, and how much detail would you not want? Because there's a fine line between accuracy and performance. And there's a lot of manufacturers that want these highly detailed models, when in reality it's really more self-serving, and the architects are looking for something that's more of a massing model with a little bit of additional details. So kind of going through that and getting a sense of expectation, and then sort of aligning that expectation with the AIA level of detail and some other concepts that are surrounding that.
Yeah, so I think that's a good direction. So maybe we'll kind of plan that way for June, and encourage any of you that are listening to send us your ideas, or if we have a little time at the end, we might discuss this a little bit more. But we want to make sure we've got enough time for Andrew's presentation. So, but keep that in mind. Send us your ideas, or maybe at the end we'll talk about it a little bit more about what the next topics.
Sure. And now, Roger, before we pass it over to Andrew, was there anything that you want to add or talk about as far as housekeeping?
Well, I think now we're just going to kind of keep with what we've been doing, trying to meet towards the third or fourth Friday of the month. We think we've got our topic for next month set, so we'll be able to get our invitation out quickly. As far as housekeeping on the call today, we encourage you to ask questions. Please either raise your hand using the GoToWebinar function, or you can type a question in the question box and we'll speak it out for you or invite you to join the discussion. We'll kind of play that along, see how it goes. We'll also probably have some time at the end depending on how the questions fall today. So I guess with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and make Andrew the presenter, and then in the meanwhile I'm just going to Bob introduced Andrew just a little bit. I've worked with Andrew for quite a few years myself. We're really privileged to have him here to speak with us today. He's got a real strong background in this area, having done even his PhD at Stanford in the area of product modeling. So Andrew's got a lot of experience here. He's been working on some practical applications as well as continuing to advance the theory of how do we connect information and data about products and really all sorts of things to building information models. So Andrew, please take it away.
Thank you, Roger. And I want to do a little check here. Can people see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it just fine. And we're not seeing any hands up or any comments that that note that there's any issues. So with that, I'm gonna go with I think everybody can see it okay.
Okay. Roger, thanks for the introduction. It's always a pleasure to work with you and to have this opportunity, and I want to thank the audience for taking the time to listen in. Today what I'm going to talk about is just a couple of slides on what is BIM and IPD. I know some of you are deep into it, and it may be redundant. Some others may be new. But I always find it's useful in talking about product data to place it in context of the overall definition of BIM and IPD and how it's changed in the industry. Then I'm going to go a little bit into product data in building information modeling and why it's important for why BIM IPD is important for project specifications. And then at the end, I'll just touch on our SMARTBIM offerings. I will show some, part of the slide deck will be some slides that describe our offerings, and if time permits, I'll also demonstrate some of our software. So why don't we jump into it. So what is building information modeling? People often think about it as the 3D geometry model, but I like to emphasize that it's geometry plus data. And that's the revolution. Back in the 90s when I was doing research at the Center for Integrated Facility Engineering, really the focus was on how do you integrate a 3D parametric model of a building with data from various databases. And so the definition we came up with, at least conceptually or logically, a BIM is a single integrated model that represents multiple design and engineering disciplines. A BIM is made up of building elements that represent products and assemblies, are described in terms of their geometry, their function, their behavior, and there's several kinds of behavior. There's both kind of the CAD behavior, the parametric CAD behavior of objects, in terms of how they stretch and flex in the CAD system. But there's also other kinds of behavior in terms of how they perform in terms of building analysis, whether that's egress, lighting, thermal performance, etc. And then another really important element, a thing to think about in terms of building information models, is that all of these elements have relationships to one another and dependencies with each other. And so it's those relationships that allow to reason using applications about a model. And so a lot of the work we did at SciFi was working out these types of relationships. The benefit of a BIM is that it enables multiple engineering analyses. And I'm going to get into this a little bit further in the coming slides, but truly it's that ability to bring together these multiple engineering, design and engineering disciplines and move analysis of the design model up earlier into the project delivery cycle that is the underlying big value of BIM. What is integrated project delivery? I think practitioners out in the field have come to the conclusion that it's nice to have the tools, but you also need business processes that allow you to make good use of the tools. And you don't want to forget that BIM and IPD is really dependent on people's behavior and changing the way people deliver projects. So if you were to go into an IPD project and go into a big room, you might find a on-site, you might find a room where the architect, the building owner, the contractor and subs, and even the manufacturer, suppliers, and distributors are all huddled together, modeling the project in 3D and working out clashes and problems before they get found in the field. It's based on concepts that have come from other industries, concurrent design and engineering and analysis that was really worked through in the manufacturing and industries over 25 years ago. And in addition, IPD is borrowing from lean manufacturing principles where you maximize the amount of off-site fabrication of components, particularly in the MEP area, and do just-in-time delivery of the site. And also, people are beginning to look at how do they change how they schedule jobs, and going more towards a just-in-time scheduling approach where you look at what's been accomplished, you look at who and what is on site, and you prioritize work in that order, as opposed to writing a big schedule ahead of time that's deterministic and maybe doesn't actually meet the project conditions. So the big value of BIM, as I noted, is it's the potential here to integrate our industry both horizontally and vertically. By horizontally, I mean the development of reusable and shareable project information models all the way from the first programming stage of a project through to building operations and pass off to the owner of building operations. Where we are in reality is typically we have multiple desktop applications that are beginning to model the project in a BIM kind of way, but typically they're still desktop applications that aren't integrated yet. So we still have a ways to go, but we're making progress. The vertical integration has to do with looking at discrete systems in a building. Maybe it's the structural system, maybe it's the mechanical system, etc., and taking that through vertically from design to fabrication and installation. And so what we're seeing, like for example, down at Georgia Tech, they've shown how you can take the steel model all the way through to fabrication from design. And similarly, we're seeing a lot of innovation and experimentation with MEP systems and IPD projects, where they're doing off-site fabrication of mechanical systems and bringing them as a kit of parts or pre-assembled to the site. And there's experiencing very drastic decreases in RFIs on a project. So keeping all of this in mind, as the goal for BIM and IPD in terms of how we decrease the cost of project delivery and improve quality, the potential of BIM and IPD is really to enable us to make changes or to model and simulate the building early from multiple engineering perspectives, and to move changes earlier in the design process where they are less costly. And so this Patrick McLeamy curve is very popular. It's pretty well published at this point. It very clearly gets the point across. So in the context of BIM and IPD and making changes early and being able to model buildings and simulate their performance before they're built, what is the role of product data? So I'm going to run through a couple of slides now. We'll see, this is actually work we're doing at SMARTBIM, where we are moving we are creating rich data sets, both in terms of geometry and corporate data in this case, into models that can be used early in the design phase. So we're working with a major healthcare provider, whereas in the past they would do a room template like you see on the left in 2D. Now we're building we are modeling all the contractor installed equipment for this healthcare provider in rich 3D format, and we are attaching both product data when they refer to specific products, and also corporate data for that healthcare provider, where they have a set of guidelines requirements, and choices even. They get down to specific product choices for certain types of products for the contractor installed equipment in their facilities. I'm sure people have heard of the various types of analyses that are actually doing these analyses with BIM. I just have one slide on this, but it's really, these are the multiple engineering perspectives I was talking about before, where when you get these analyses, you're able to do early evaluation of the model and solve problems early and improve quality. This slide has to do with cost analysis. Is very important. These 6 images are all different what-ifs for the same project, and our friends at Hathaway were able to calculate a cost range of from $52.1 million to $29.6 million on this project based on these analyses. So they're able to, at a very early stage, optimize the project for both cost and value.
Hey Andrew, are you gonna share with us? I guess you're probably going to, but a little bit about how that what you call the corporate data and the model representations get integrated together?
Yeah, as I go into further slides, I'll talk more about that.
Okay, good.
As we move forward at SMARTBIM, our goals are to create data-rich model that allow you to index the geometry models to external data sources. I'm talking about that right now, in fact, Roger. One example of that is the way we are currently already with our products. We're linking Revit element models to RS means construction cost and producing what we call a cost check of a design model that's appropriate for an architect or an engineer to use during design development. I'm jumping ahead here, but we also just recently acquired a company called VICO Scorecard, and I'll describe that in a separate slide later on. But the goal with VICO Scorecard, some of you may have used it or heard of it. It's a website, it's a company that collects lead documentation and ratings data, and you go in and indicate the products you want to use in your project, and it will provide you with lead point calculations and also lead documentation localized to your project. Our vision is to be able to, in the same way we connect RS means construction costs to BIM elements and produce quantity takeoffs and cost checks, we also want to provide what we call green QTO, which is to take advantage of the counts and quantities of the project, link it up again to an external data source, and provide services that allow you to make early evaluations of your project in terms of green analysis.
Now, Andrew, it's Robert Wygan. I just had a quick question. On the green analysis, does that, can that be done with any components that an architect might be using, or do they need to be loaded with attributes that are from SmartBIM components? Putting the rubber to the road, how is that actually happening?
Well, both with the green and the cost data, it obviously helps a lot if you have good classification codes. And so our objects, we populate master format, uniformat, and omniclass codes for the objects that we publish out. But our tools are smart enough to work with what we call objects out of the wild. Now, I can get into this more specifically for our costing application because it's a released application, commercially released application. And when I demo that, I can address that a little bit more. But we took why don't I, if you don't mind, I'd like to park that issue and bring it up in the demo of QTO.
Sure.
But the short answer is tools should be able to work really well if there's good classifications and good data, but they should still be able to work if there's no data, what I call objects out of the wild. And the tool set should help mediate that process and let you see how accurate you are based on how good the data is, and let you, the practitioner, make a decision about how much time you want to invest in annotating your objects. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, kind of the potential of BIM, and particularly parametric BIM authoring systems like Revit or the Graphisoft application, ArchiCAD, are that you're able to model these building elements parametrically. And so, and what we mean by that is if the dimensions change, or the fire rating changes, or whether or not, in this case, the door has a light in it, what kind of frame is on the door, all of these things should be specifiable as you design the object, and the system should generate what we call either an application of the product for a project, or what I tend to call a configuration of the project, of the product. And so these BIM systems should be able to support, as you were mentioning a little earlier, a very conceptual model of a door. It might just be a rectangle hole in a wall initially. But we should know that there's a door going to go there, and it should have some door behavior. And then during preliminary design, you might nail down the dimensions. During construction documents, you will nail down the configuration and specification of the door so that it can be procured, and so it can be bid on and procured. And then obviously during bidding and procurement, you're going to match those requirements to products, real-world products that meet the basis of design. A system should be flexible to support these levels of modeling and provide tools that allow users to easily change from one level of detail to another as they move along. The other kind of thing that I think project specifiers or people who are interested in writing specs need to think about is, now that we have a BIM model, we have the potential to very accurately represent every instance of every product in the building. So whereas specifications now basically are built off of templates, which give you kind of overall information about a product category, I think some rethinking eventually will need to be done when we have this very accurate representation of every configuration or application of every product in the building. What I'm showing here is a storage facility that we actually modeled for a customer several years ago. Up in the left, that's the building, and then in the lower right is a view of the building of just the doors. All the roll-down doors and passageway doors and entry doors, etc. for that project. The point I'm simply trying to get across here is we have the potential now to basically configure and specify for procurement each instance and report on it. So any special conditions could be tracked. And then the next point I like to make simply is that what is the process of going from the model to specs? Well, in my mind, I'm kind of a technologist. You've got a configured product or a model of a configured product in your BIM model, particularly when you get late into the design phase. And at that point, you should be able to map it to other schemas, and I consider a document schema for three-part specs to be a different kind of schema, and generate the specifications. And so there are tools that do that. I've actually been involved in writing product selectors and configurators that generate three-part specs. I have a little bit of background in that. And it's not easy, but it's possible. And it would make us rethink our approach to writing specs in the long run.
Andrew, how does that, there are tools out there that connect to like Revit, and they, I think, basically take the classification and then generate a spec section from the classification of an object, but it's sort of working still at what you were talking about, the broader type level about a particular object.
Right, and that's kind of the state of the art today. So, for example, our objects, we've set up our objects so that the master format codes in them make it easy to, for example, make it easy for the adapter that the eSpecs folks have wrote to Revit to get master format codes out that help generate those templates. I would say, that's the state of the art today. As the industry moves forward, we'll actually be able to completely describe a procurable product in the BIM, and at that point we have to rethink about how are we writing our specs.
There's one concern that I have with that, and that's that generally the person that is actually modeling the component, creating the model, doesn't necessarily know anything about the door and doesn't have the ability to actually specify a door. So when a door goes into a model and then a specification is written from it, it's really incomplete in terms of it's being specified, because nobody who has an expertise on those products has put their finger on it. And that's where really there needs to be a bidirectional association for this to work, so that a baseline specification could be created, but then somebody knowledgeable can take that template, flesh it out further, and then the information can be placed back into the model itself.
I completely agree, and a big element, I think it's a wonderful point, and a big element of that is these BIM models today primarily exist in CAD authoring tools that are desktop focused, and as we look at extending BIM to have a big eye in the middle, you need to really find a way to pull the model out of the CAD system, where the CAD system is just a collection of views of the BIM model. Pull it out of the BIM model and make it shareable with other project stakeholders who are going to access it through different applications that are task specific for what they do at a particular phase in the project. So the example I can give, concrete example I can give again is the costing, where our QTO product that I'll show you extracts the data out of the BIM model, puts it up in an independent interface. You can save the quantity, take off to its own file type, and an estimator can come along later on and massage the costs. It's that kind of thing, and if you think about that in terms of the internet, the delivery of applications and services over the internet that are very targeted and very simple, I think you can start to make progress. But I think it's well taken.
Yeah, and it just it leads me to where we're going with this is think about BIM as BIM is not software. BIM is a giant relational database. It's vector points and it's metadata. And the authoring software is nothing more than an input device for that information. And if you think about all of the pieces of documentation, from the drawing sheets to the specifications to the schedules to the quantity takeoffs to change orders to substitution requests, all of these can be thought of actually as both input and output devices for that relational database. And I really think that putting a model out in the cloud in one way, shape, or form, not to overuse that term, but being able to put the model out for management and allow the way that people are already working. Specifiers work in word processing software. Allowing them to do their job, still using that and creating the hooks into the software will streamline everybody's process and allow everybody to collaborate the way that they're supposed to.
Well, I agree with you. The one clarification we might make there is that as we look at what's happening on the internet with major providers that are beginning to model things in other domains, whether they're products for retail sale or whatever, we're looking at not relational databases, but there's a new generation of databases called post-relational databases. And a key feature of them, and this gets back to the point earlier, being able to start with a very simple conceptual model and get to a detailed model. A post-relational database permits you to add to the schema incrementally over time and have it all work. And so the ability to add properties dynamically to a project as your business, as your different analyses emerge that you want to do is very critical. and it's critical to being able to support the project delivery lifecycle. And so the one clarification I might make is we should be looking at what's happening in other domains with titans of technology that are delivering applications as internet services, whether that's Amazon or Google or what have you, or Microsoft, and start to understand how innovations in these other domains can influence how we think about modeling in AEC.
Sure.
So let's just getting into the SMARTBIM offerings. We develop SMARTBIM objects, which they're at this point we're Revit focused, and they're building element models, or what you guys call product models. In Revit, we brand them as SMARTBIM because we do add classification data, we do add manufacturer-specific technical data, and we do add cost data in terms of the means, not directly to the objects, but we make them indexable to the means. And we also, as I hinted previously, are adding green and lead documentation data for our new acquisition scorecard. I can hear someone typing in the background. If you don't...
Sorry, that's me. I'm actually answering the question. Sorry about that.
Okay. If you could just mute, it would be great.
Sure.
So let me talk a little bit of our content, objects and spaces. I have another group called SMARTBIM Managed Solutions, which is working closely in a consultative relationship with building product manufacturers, owners, and architects and engineers. We have our object management tool called SMARTBIM Library. I'll talk a little bit about the tool as it is today and where we're going with it. And then, as I've mentioned already, we have another product called SMARTBIM QTO, which is a quantity takeoff and cost checking tool that works on top of Revit. And of course, VICO Scorecard. So SMARTBIM objects, as I mentioned, they're Revit families, and where we are setting them up so that the data can interoperate with analyses, tools, behavior checkers, and data from other sources. What I mean by other sources is you might have, for example, a lead database in VICO Scorecard, or a RS means cost database, or a contractor's internal cost database, and these objects should be able to communicate and harmonize with them without actually stuffing these other data sets into the BIM model, into the geometry model itself, where it's tough to manage it. I think I've hit on this ability to incrementally specify completeness and precision of the model as you go through the project lifecycle, and this kind of mashed up notion of what is an object, both the geometry and the data, should support specific analyses that are necessary for project delivery, whether that's cost estimating, bidding, green analysis, etc. Our objects are both generic and manufacturer specific. This is right off of our website. At this point, we've built Revit Families, parametric Revit Families, under contract to well over 60 manufacturers. We don't simply do onesies and twosies. We do a whole product line when we do it. And at this point, our collection of families is well over 6,000 families and nearly 30,000 family types, where a type is a specific size, for example, of a door that might have 30 possible sizes in terms of height and width, etc. SMARTBIM spaces are collections of SMARTBIM objects organized by room type and indexed to data. I was asked earlier, oh, how are we doing that? Well, in the case of a healthcare provider, like I mentioned earlier, they want to tie both their requirements, their corporate requirements for specific elements and rooms, their recommendations. Sometimes they don't have a requirement, but they have a recommendation to an architect. They want to tie that to specific objects and rooms, and sometimes whole departments. And they also want to tie, in some cases, they have bulk procurement agreements with specific manufacturers, and they want to tie specific product choices that are allowable for a given room type to those objects. And so this is very much in the theme of we build the objects for these owners, and we create a catalog of those objects, of their approved corporate objects. We help them with organizing their data sets that are typically what I call corporate data, and we set up so we can index that corporate data to the objects, whether that's the building element, the room, or the division of the corporation. We are putting this information up into a repository on the internet under login control for the, in this case, the building owner, and who then shares it with project consultants who are working on projects for them. I hope that answers one of the questions that came earlier. At this point now, I'm also going to show our two applications, SMARTBIM Library and SMARTBIM QTO. I'll show them very briefly. I'll switch over to them. Here we've got a simple Revit project. I sometimes go into some detail talking about quality of BIM objects. I think I'm going to pass on that today, other than to mention that quality has to do with good decomposition of an assembly to its piece parts, full attention to how much detail the geometry so that you don't get a heavy model that uses up too much processing power in the CAD system. And also it has to be, and there's tricks to the trade. It's kind of an art to do this well. I have a whole lecture on it. And then obviously when we're building objects under contract to manufacturers, these models have to truly represent the actual real-world product. And so we take all of these factors into account in terms of thinking about quality. I think the last one that I'd like to mention is that through our tools that you'll see in a moment and our customer service system, we have a feedback loop. So if there ever is a problem with a BIM element model, we take your input, we fix it, and we push it back out to you through our content update service that I'll show you in a moment. So let me move. How are you? Is there much lag here on the screen?
It's a little bit. It's not too bad though.
Okay. So when you're using Revit, for example, the way you go and find a family today is there's a Revit command called load family, and it pulls up a UI, and I can change to a thumbnail view. And what you get in Revit is pretty much the file system. You get an image and you get a name. Now when these objects are parametric, the name is pretty irrelevant because it can have all sorts of different configurations. And so this is a very poor way to think about how are you going to organize your families and manage them and know when you want to find a family to use in your project. So let me cancel out of that Revit command. To solve that problem, we created a tool called SMARTBIM Library. You can launch it here from Revit, or you can launch it from the file system. I already have it open in the background here. And it is it's a cataloging tool for Revit families. Each of these icons here that I'm highlighting represents a different catalog. The one catalog of families. The one here that I'm highlighting is the one that we distribute to you through our content update service, and I'll show you that now. So when you turn on SMARTBIM Library in the morning, if there's new content we're publishing, you can select a content package like I'm doing here and click on download, and it will actually pull it down to your local desktop. Or if you have it installed to a LAN in your office, it'll pull down to the catalog on your LAN. I'm going to cancel out of this content update service here. Once you've got a catalog in the system, you can navigate by the Revit categories, and then we bring up a rich information view of the family in the tool. We have embedded the Autodesk Design Review tool here, so you can actually manipulate the model in 3D. We've published all the properties. Let me find a different one here, sorry. So this science bench here has four types. It's a little bit better view. So we published all the Revit family properties out. You can, for any two types, you can drag and drop them side by side to compare the values. We also provide Revit modeling guidelines, which is how we choose to name families based on a nodal system. We provide representative values for each node and a worked example down here. Now, if you don't like our guidelines, these are just HTML files and you can put in your own. And then we provide very rich search capability. So say, for example, I want to put in a different skylight into that project. In our tool, you can search by family and type. You can search by user-defined tags at any property. We've also special-cased property searches for CSI master format codes, assembly codes, and Omniclass codes. Let's say I just want to find a skylight. I have here a catalog of well over 6,000 families. Well, actually more, because I've got multiple catalogs loaded. I'm going to click Find, and it's going to prune the tree to just those families that have the term sky in the name. If I had typed in skylight, it would have been a smaller list. So under Windows, I've got 13. I can pull up a Dome skylight here. It's got a pretty long type list. I could make that. By the way, all these tabs are configurable. I can drag them, drop them all over the place, and even outside the application frame. And if I determine that I like a family, I can drag and drop it from the tool back over to Revit, and it will insert into Revit. There it is. Let me know when your screen is caught up.
Yeah.
As I've noted, SMARTBIM library allows you to receive families from us through SMARTBIM catalog. It also allows you to publish your own catalogs of your own data. So here I happen to have loaded some catalogs. I'm cooperating with some folks over at VICO, and who's interested in our tool for being able to, VICO now is VICO is a suite of applications for doing detailed quantity takeoff and cost estimating and project controls based on BIM models. And they now have an adapter to Revit. And the only way they distribute their families now is through Revit project files. So we're talking with them about creating catalogs of their families for distribution to their customers. And what we're finding is kind of interesting. Number one, the way you get a good mapping of a Revit element into the VICO system is through the Omniclass number. So here you've got the Omniclass code populated. And what we're finding is that VICO is kind of a succession of distribution channels. VICO wants to distribute these catalogs to contractors. The contractors in turn want to take these the families in the VICO catalog, and they want to add more data so that the mapping into their cost estimating system is more accurate. And then they end up creating their own catalog based on the initial catalog, and then they want to share that catalog with project participants and get the architects and engineers to use those objects so that we have better throughput on the data entry, initial data entry, to the costing, to the quantity takeoff and costing side and lead analysis side that the contractors are doing. So that, very briefly, is a SMARTBIM library. I could show you a lot more. I could show you more powerful searching. I could show you how we can attach critical documents to these objects. I can show you how you can use the tool to create catalogs that you're reviewing families, and then to move families between catalogs to build up a corporate catalog or an office catalog. In the interest of time, we only have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to switch over, though, to the SMARTBIM QTO product. Are there any questions while I'm doing that?
Just a couple that had come in were, is the SMARTBIM object developed to meet the IFD Building Smart Library standards?
Good question. Not at this time, not yet.
Okay, and then the other one was...
Roger would love you to be more responsive to that, about that, I know.
Well, no, I said that same thing in responding to that question that we talked about it, but what about IFC? Are you doing any support for IFC properties in these product models that you're building, or not?
We try to reference the IFCs, but really the mapping to IFC happens through Revit on the IFC export. Mm-hmm. Through Revit, and that's where the mapping of whatever property we provide is to an IFC property set. We could do more along those lines, and I've known Roger a long time. I would love to get involved in that kind of work as long as we can establish marketing.
Right, you got to get paid back for doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the bottom line on that whole topic, though. Is we're a ruthless commercial outfit, right? We need to get paid, but some of us in our ruthless commercial outfit are very committed to the industry and moving the industry forward. And my statement on this is the following: if you have a rich model of one schema, getting it to another schema is not that hard. The challenge is getting the rich model in the first place.
Right.
And so that's where we're trying to make progress now. What's really hard is when you don't have a rich schema in the first place, and you need to figure out how to get it into a rich schema.
That's a great point.
And so I would love to work more closely with the industry standards and make our objects interoperable with them. And I'm just waiting for the right opportunity to do that. And in the meantime, we're working with a lot of manufacturers, getting them to build BIM element models. And that's a major step forward. Okay? Yeah. So let me here we've got a project in Revit. It's a college athletic facility that was provided to us by one of our customers. I can zoom in here, get a little closer. You see some of the detail in the model. A lot of all the architectural elements. You see some structural steel in there. You see the foundation. Back in here, you see some MEP elements blocked out that are serving this gymnasium in the back. I've made the roof and the walls and the ceiling transparent so you can get some idea of the content here. SMARTBIM QTO is an add-on product to Revit, although you can launch it independently of Revit once you've created the takeoff. And what you can do here is you can either take off the entire project or you can take off the active view. So for folks that are doing remodeling work or just want to look at one level in a building, you can set up your Revit view with those filters, and then it will take the active view out and not the entire project. So I've selected active view. In here, here you select the project phases and phase states. So we want to get all phase 1, all isolation, all demolished, and all temporary. We're going to leave existing. And we're going to do the takeoff. Those terms, those project phases were defined in the project by the Revit modeler. And so we're just leveraging the power of Revit there in its ability to set up project phases and create views, graphical views that filter the project for those phases.
Is that some kind of a standard inside Revit? Do they have standard phase names and descriptions and everything, Andrew, or is that sort of open to the user?
They have a tool that allows you to set up your own schema for phases. So, for example, if you have an Omniclass table that describes project phases, I presume you do. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's phases.
You can map that into Revit quite easily. Okay. So here is our application, and you can see we've categorized it by Revit category. We would love in the future to be able to, as we mature this product, to also to have this tree be configurable so that you can organize by Revit category, or you can organize by Omniclass code, or by uniformat code or master format code. That's all on our wish list for the future, and it's really kind of how you classify is kind of orthogonal to the initial modeling of the objects themselves. Because what you'll see is, as you know, assigning for example, a piece of casework to a category, or let's go down to a wall that actually has a code associated with it. The indexing occurs on the assembly code here, and so you should be able to build this tree on the left based on the assembly codes you find. So in our case, it's just a matter of you know, how we prioritize getting this product out and when we will deliver these different ways of organizing the project. But at the day, you've got building elements, and what does this tool do? Well, for certain ones like light fixtures, you're counting them by each. Okay. For elements like walls, we're taking them out by square footage. You'll notice here that each line in the estimate represents the collection of instances of a family and type out of the project. So there's actually 62 instances of the wall in the project, this highlighted wall, and there's over 6,500 square feet of that wall. Now, what we're trying to achieve here in terms of cost checking is to make it easy for a typical practitioner to get some early costing for a project. Not as accurate as you might need for actual procurement, but a sanity check, if you will. So to do that, you have to indicate where in the world this project exists. I happen to know this one's in Greenfield. And then Roger's very familiar with this. These are the means building types. If square footage isn't already in Revit, you need to enter it. Most architects know the square footage of their project. And then what you do is you click on this button here, and it goes and gets, it does its best, it does the best it can to map these elements to means. Let me go into that just for a minute. If all we know is we have a door, and we don't have any classification code assigned to that door, or a fire rating, or a construction type, we will do a statistical lookup at the means database. We do know the door's dimensions because it came out of Revit. And we found some interesting correlations in the means database between area and door cost. And so we take an average price, and that's the price we give you. If on another day you start to fill out property definitions for the classification code, the specific classification code, or the door type, or the construction, or the fire rating, you'll get a more precise price back from the means query. So we kind of handle that in an incremental way, and we like to think that we're mediating that process. So here we've got a candidate price for the building. It doesn't look very high. Let's assume for a moment that we have no structural at all in this project. And let's pretend for a moment that it's a wood frame building. I can always manually define a new line. Andrew's structure, and we're going to call the family wood framing. Let me pull this up here, and I'm going to put in a quantity of 10,000 linear feet. And I'm going to swag in a $5 per linear foot number here. I could break out material installation, but I'm not. I'm just going to swag a number in here. I'm going to update. Now I've got a new category in the project, Andrew structure. I've got a quantity and I've got a cost. Okay? So what the tool allows you to do is the expectation of using this tool is that you would make two passes. You get the quantities out of Revit, you make a pass through the quantities to see if there's items that are not modeled in Revit that you want to add. And then the second pass is to review the costs that come back from means. And if you don't like them, you can override them. So, for example, coming back down to the walls, let's look at the cost that came back for this stud partition. Here's the means cost. If it has a decent uniformat code, you can actually go look at the underlying means assemblies and choose a specific one if you don't like our price, our average price, and then update the project. So between those two passes, filling in manually the items that don't exist in Revit and reviewing the pricing, we found that experienced practitioners can come up with an estimate they believe in within 2 to 4 hours. You can always save the project to a quantity takeoff file so that a non-Revit user can come in and do this work. Oops. Or you can export to Excel or PDF. If you'd rather take the quantities and work with them in Excel, you can do it there. So that's the quantity takeoff project tool, and it's a fairly simple example of linking the 3D geometry data to other sources of data to add value beyond the CAD authoring tool.
Bob, one question. Can you push the information back into the model? Like you've added cost information at the end.
You wouldn't want to put cost information in the geometry model typically.
Well, I mean, my thought here is if you think of the project life cycle and the model being that central point of reference, you would have the ability to push the information back in and then take it out at another point using Navisworks or another piece of software, so that you have a singular point of reference saying it once and saying it in the right place.
What I didn't show you here is you can always refresh your quantities from the Revit model as the model changes and do that. This is a desktop application. When I get into the last slide and I talk about our futures, you'll get a hint of where we're going that might go in the direction you're asking me about.
Sure.
I just want to mention Eco Scorecard. I think I've already mentioned it. So that's another one of our offerings. And so what's next with SMARTBIM? Well, I've already been talking about how we're integrating performance data and performance data with BIM geometry. We are moving from desktop to a repository that can be deployed either to a local network or the internet or to the cloud. So you can do these extractions both of BIM element models from your file system to create libraries or projects from a Revit project to create project repositories, and then create a repository that's capable of representing projects, discrete objects, and linking them to various kinds of data sets to do these analyses. And really it will be a platform that allows us and others to come and build applications that are task specific and very simple and get work done. And so that's our future, is to kind of solve this problem of this data that exists on the desktop and to move it to a shareable operating system free environment where people can share information with login access and control. We think this is very important to moving BIM and IPD forward in terms of making all this information useful to people who don't necessarily deal with the CAD model specifically.
That's a great point, Andrew, and I think we're out of time, so maybe that was your final point. Did you put up here how people can get their hands on these great products if they're interested?
Yeah.
Or how they can contact you, so leave that there so people can get your email address if they want to get in touch with you directly.
Yeah.
I mean, this is great to show us not only connecting information, but what you can do with it and where you guys are going. I think this fits in really well with the discussions we've been having about what are the right strategies for adding information to BIM. You touched on specifications and how they connect, and that gave us a couple points to talk about some more when we get to our wrap-up on this whole section in a couple months. So I think this was fantastic. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today.
Yeah, this was, I agree, Andrew. This was a very unique approach, and it shows a good set of tools that are out there for people to use, and some unique perspectives on how things are to be handled.
Well, it's my pleasure, and my phone number and my email are here for anybody who would want to follow up in any way. I'm more than happy. And Roger, I look forward to opportunities to work with you and your colleagues at CSI going into the future.
Well, thank you, Andrew. We'll certainly keep trying to take you up on that. So I think, Bob, our next meeting is going to be May 20 or May 27. I guess I could do either one of those.
Yeah, I think either one would be fine. AIA is the week before, so I'll be down there. But that would either the 20th or the 27th. I think we'll kind of figure out offline. Okay. We had talked about going back to the third week, so the 20th is probably going to be a little more practical.
Good. Well, just wanted to let everybody know that. So from me, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you in a month.
All right, very good. Thanks, everyone.